Oh, we about to go live. Okay, we got 5 minutes now for real.
Okay.
All right, let me check. Let me check my Facebook and see if I see it. Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to another episode of the Significant Life Podcast. I'm your host, Janice Anderson. Y'all, I have been too rusty at this thing. I literally forgot my name, the intro, and everything else. Welcome to today's episode. I'm so excited. I am your host, Janice Anderson, and let me tell you something. You need to go ahead and grab a pen and a piece of paper because today is going to be an amazing episode. If you are tired of striving through life, you don't want to strive and you don't want to settle, and you are ready to embrace this life of sweatless victory, then you want to tune in to today's podcast. Now, as you know, I do this live version for those of you who are available to watch us live here on YouTube and on Facebook. But by the time it gets to iTunes, we'll edit it down and take out all the mess ups. But we do it live. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments and you want to shout us out, then you can do that in the audience. But once we go live, we'll talk to the iTunes audience and we'll teach, and then I'll go ahead and greet you all afterwards. So if you're ready, grab your pen and your paper. Listen, okay, this episode is one of 4 in a 4-part mini-series called A Life of Sweatless Victory. This is for the woman who is tired of striving. She knows that what God has for her life doesn't require that she works as hard as she used to. And let me just say this. It doesn't mean that she has to settle. Just because she's not striving doesn't mean she has to settle. And I can't bring a better guest than our guest today, Becky Davis. I'm so excited. Okay, excuse me, for to join us for this first episode, because Becky is going to help us to walk this out in a practical way, and she's going to tell us how she got out of the strive zone and entered into this space of sweatless victory in her life, and just navigating the various things in her life. So if you know Becky, you know this is going to be juicy and it's going to be really good. One last thing I want you to know is this episode is brought to you empowered by our upcoming event, Arise, Align, and Live, here in Atlanta, Georgia, August 4th and 5th. Ladies, get your pen and your paper, carve off your calendar, join us here in Atlanta. This is our first get together as a Significant Life community, live and in person. It's going to be amazing. If you want to know how to take the principles that we talk about on this podcast and put them into action so that your life changes, then you don't want to miss this event. All right, let's get ready for our guest. She's in the green room. Everybody, please welcome to the stage. Let me get my sound right. Hold on. Let me see. Wait, I got to get my. See that? That's my robot voice. That's what I'm trying to get. The way.
Listen. Okay. Wait. Wait a minute. Let me tell you.
Okay, am I regular? Let me tell you what's so funny about this right here. Mm, mm, mm. I was excited about putting on my clappers to clap Becky in, but my child has been playing with my soundboard. And so everything but the clappers came up. Let me just welcome to the stage my girlfriend, my friend, my sister friend, Becky Davis. Y'all, let's give her a warm welcome. Hey, Becky.
I was like, what are those sounds?
Oh my gosh,
Hey,
Becky.
hey, Janice. Hey, everybody.
I'm so glad that you're here, girl. We've had a time trying to get this thing together, huh, Becky? Becky. Thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast. I am excited about what we're talking about in this topic. It actually is one that is dear to my heart. And I thought what a more fitting person than you to join me today to talk about this life of making the shift from striving, and still being successful, but doing it without a strive into this life of sweatless victory. Now, before we dive into our topic, I would love for you to introduce yourself formally, tell the ladies a little bit about yourself in the way that you want them to remember you and know you. Go ahead.
So she's already kind of shared. My name is Becky A. Davis. I always got to put that A in there. Known as the chief bosspreneur, I worked in corporate America for 15 years. Um, then left there to start my own company doing leadership development and helping small businesses with executive coaching and helping the C-suite community. And then recently, I took on a role as a CEO of a $20 million company. And when Janice talked to me and a few of our friends about Sweatless Victories a few years ago, what it kind of conjured up in my mind is that a sweatless victory means it doesn't have to be as hard as we make it. And because we're going to work. If you're a high performer, you're going to put in the work. But too often, we make it a lot harder than it really has to be. And so, in thinking about that, in my life and my journey, I've had I made things with a lot of sweat in it. And from the time she spoke Sweatless Victories, it just helped me to start looking at things like when I find myself into running into things and working crazy, you just like, Becky, stop. It is not as hard as you are making it. You need to evaluate and figure out how you can do this. And this is not the way to do it. So I'm excited to kind of share my journey with you today to be able to hopefully help impart some of the wisdom that God has imparted on me to share some of that with you.
Yay, Becky, I love that. I love that you already started to dive a little bit into our topic by just acknowledging that, you are a woman that is a successful woman and you're doing a lot of great things. And sometimes we really have to stop for a second in order to live out this sweatless victory. We got to stop for a second and say, wait. It don't take all this. I don't have to do all of this. And so, ladies, let's just level set for a minute and let's define what a sweatless victory is and what it is not. Because I know some of you, if you're like me, you're a hardworking woman and you make things happen, you're the go-to woman in your circle. The idea of a sweatless victory, it sounds exciting. It sounds appealing. It sounds like, oh, okay, I want that. But then it also sounds a little pie in the sky. It sounds a little bit unrealistic and a little bit irresponsible. Becky, does it sound like that to you first? Like, it
Yeah,
sounds
no, I
good, but
totally get it.
yes, but how am I do that? And so often we think there's no way I can have a sweatless victory at the same time. Sweatless and victory don't go in the same sentence. But
Mm-hmm.
sweatless, ladies, doesn't mean effortless. It just means success, progress, and forward motion without the striving. So as we were preparing for this episode, I actually took the time to define the word strive, and I really wanted to share what the dictionary had to say about it. Of course, I said I wanted to share, and then, my notes don't want to be right here where they were 5 minutes ago. But I want to talk to you about what the word striving means. Let me give you this dictionary definition. This is, let me tell y'all something. This is the benefit and the benefit and the drawback of going live, because all the real stuff be coming out. So listen, let me just say, for those of you who are watching us live and you're nervous about doing something because you're like, oh my God, I got to have it all together. And what if I mess up? This is what happened when you mess up. When you mess up, you just say, hold on, y'all, let me find the paper because it was right here and it ain't right here no more. But you keep on going. And sometimes if we're not careful, we'll let a voice in our head keep us stuck and stagnant and sabotage ourselves because it ain't all right all the time. And we will make
Mm-hmm.
something that's not the main thing, like the fact that the paper wasn't right here, although I laid it right here. But we ain't gonna do that. We don't do that here at Significant Life, because we know that whether we need to get it done or come undone, this is a safe space for us to do both, and move forward. So I got my paper. Let me tell y'all what striving means. So when I looked up what it means to strive, oh, sorry, now I couldn't hear. Um, mm, mm, mm. It was right there. Okay. What it means to strive, it means, one definition, I looked up Cambridge Dictionary, and to strive means to make great efforts. To strive means to try very hard. All definitions that you're like, wait a minute, Janice, that's what we want to do. We want to make great effort. We want to try very hard. But y'all, when I dug deeper into the definition of strive, it means to be in conflict, to contend, to fight. And then the last definition that they had was to compete. As I continued my research and preparing for this episode of what it meant to strive, y'all, can I tell y'all what some of the synonyms were? Because Cambridge had this ghetto part that was in the back. And I really appreciate the ghetto part because it just broke it down. It was real down to earth. And this is what it said strive meant. It said strive meant to bend over backwards. Ladies, where in your life are you bending over backwards? To
Mm.
do your darndest. Now, it didn't say darn, it actually said the other word, but I'm going to let this be a kid-friendly podcast today, so we ain't going to say that other word. And then the third definition was to jump through hoops. And so when we think about the life that God designed for us to live, and we think about walking into this life of sweatless victory, it's a life where we're not jumping through hoops. We're not bending over backwards. And
Yeah.
we definitely not doing our darndest to make something happen that we know that God called us to. Okay, all right. And so that's what it means to strive. And so when I looked up the antonym for striving, which is our sweatless victory, this is what it meant: to make peace, to relax, to rest. And y'all, guess what? This one right here, I doggone threw my little dictionary app down, almost broke my phone because I couldn't even believe that this was in there. Y'all, the antonym to strive means to surrender.
That part.
Becky, some of us, the reason why we're not living the life of a sweatless victory is because we're not living a life of surrender. That's a whole
Right.
nother episode. I'm not going to even get into that right now. I just want to hear your story, Becky. So as you think about that, you hear the definition of striving, and you hear the antonym of striving, a sweatless victory, and how we want to shape it here today. I would love for you to just walk us along your journey of entering into this place of sweatless victory, and then just sharing with us, like a real life instance of you walking that out and getting to that point.
I the majority of the beginning and the middle of my career was sweat victories. There was no less in it, because I was working, climbing, striving, trying to get to what I thought was the golden prize. And so I was bending over backwards. In a lot of cases, I was compromising values, all trying to get to a place where I thought where the golden egg was going to be there and the pot of gold was going to be there. But in all of that, it was a war with my own personal and spiritual spirit as well too, but still trying to get to a place that society tells you this is when you have achieved, is when you've gotten to this place. And so in my life, through my career, I was trying to get to that place. And so when I would see victory, it was because of everything that I would have done or put into place, the knowledge that I've gained and the steps that I've made and the promotions that I've made. But when you go home tired and exhausted mentally, physically, and then you bring that into your environment at home, and then it's affecting your marriage and your kids and your relationship with God, it's a totally different experience than when you think about it in the way that you just described it, in a piece, which is where I had to learn on this back end. Changes everything, changes how you interact at home, changes how you interact with yourself. And there are some things that you just say, no, I'm not doing that. No, not doing that today, because I choose not to do that because it doesn't align with where I'm going, what I want to do, even with work that has assigned to me, that I would say, nah, it just doesn't fit where I'm trying to go, turning money down because it just didn't align with where I was trying to go. In the beginning of my career, if it was money, I was taking it. And so that's what the difference is. But there's a piece that comes with it when it's a sweatless victory, where I don't have to do all of the things that we think we have to do, all of the things. And especially as an African American woman, you think that, and we're taught we have to do twice as much, work twice as hard just to be
Yes.
seen a
Yes.
little bit. And I think that has served us to push ourselves, but it has been a disservice to us as well, because we darn near kill ourselves. We put this cape on and we try to be superwoman, and we need to take the S off of our chest. Or if we have the S on our chest, it's because the Savior is the one that's guiding us and not the superwoman.
Listen, say
And
that,
so
Becky.
we have to do things totally different. For me, I had to just learn to do things differently, or mentally and physically, I'm killing my own self. For
Okay,
me,
let me stop you on
that's
that right there, because
danger.
I love that you said that, because there are two things I want to interrupt you about, and I want you to kind of go and share with us two things. Number one, when did you get to that point? Because it sounds good when you're on this side. I often, when I heard you say that, it reminded me of how I used to have an attitude with Solomon in the Bible. Anybody read Solomon, especially when he's writing in Ecclesiastes and he's talking about all these vanities under the sun. And he's like, oh, I see this and I see this, and it's just a vanity. It's a vanity. I'm like, everything can be futile to you because you're rich, you got wives, and you're the wisest person on the planet. So of course, none of the stuff, nothing matters, because you done made the money. You got the money and you got the women and you got the influence. So now it doesn't matter. Now it's like, oh, I see. I mean, I literally questioned God about that. Like, why he gonna say, don't work so hard? Because you worked hard. So tell me, how did you get to that place? Because sometimes it's easier, because the quest, the striving, the push, that I got to do what I got to do, and I got to make it happen, is so that I can achieve this. And on one hand, it's after I achieve it, I realize, oh, that wasn't even worth it. But what do we have to wait till we achieve it to know that? So tell me, how did you know when you were willing to just shift? And the word I want to use actually is pivot. How did you know that it was time for you to pivot? And give us an example of what point did you decided to pivot?
You know, I think for me, especially when it came to, I have a high work ethic. Always have since I first started working when I was 15. I have a high work ethic, and my mother and my dad does too. It was like, you get up, you go to work. And so a lot of that was kind of instilled in me. And then getting in the workplace and keeping that same work ethic. And a couple of things started to happen when I was in corporate America. Um, I remember I used to tell my boss, I would request off and say, "Hey, I want to take off this week for vacation. Is it okay?" I noticed my peer would say, "I'm taking off this week for vacation." It's two different ways. I asked to get approved. They told
Yeah.
I'm taking off.
Right.
And so then I was saying, why am I asking? And there, so I figured I need to shift that. I started to just watch my peers, and I was watching my peers that was not of my race. And I realized some privileges that was just automatic that I just didn't know. And I said, well, I'm in a state where we have to be fair and consistent. I'm in a company where we have to be fair and consistent. So I started doing some things that I would not have normally done, and you can't say nothing about it. And so when I started to do that, I also started to do when I started to work with entrepreneur women, and the majority of my target audience was African American women. The thing that I saw is that we were killing ourselves trying to get somewhere. And the more we were killing ourselves, we striving, we working, we hard. And it was like, wait a minute, when do we just stop? And like, wait a minute. It was all of that superwoman syndrome. And then I started doing some research. I hired a research company to do some research, like what is the statistics, and the statistics was so high for African American women. It was high for women, but African American women at an accelerated rate for mental health, health issues, all because we carry on. So we put on, we take on so much, especially with being leaders in the family. Men are gone, being leaders in the family, raising our kids. Breadwinners in the family. It was just so much. And then as I started to think about that, I made a conscious decision. I don't have to do this the way I'm not going to go crazy. I'm not finna have a head full of gray hair because I'm trying to do everything for everybody. So I decided to pivot and say, well, I don't have to do that. I don't have to do it that way. I could do it a different way. And so it started to, I made a decision to start it, to shift. And the more that I read, the more that I observed, I realized that other people were doing it differently. Why do I have to keep doing it the way that I've seen it or the way that my parents did it? Just because my parents did it doesn't mean it worked for me. They did it based on the time that they were living in and the time that worked for them, and then it was carried down and it was carried down. Janice, I learned when I did that research, when I had that research done for African American women and the super woman syndrome and being a strong Black woman, that's another syndrome, strong Black woman. This is what I found out. I found out that it comes from slavery, and that Black mothers would talk with their daughters because they knew their daughters were going to be raped. And so they would have to prepare their daughters to deal with this from the masters. So they would have to help them to be strong through those situations. So they would tell them and they would prepare their minds. And like, how do you, like me thinking about preparing my daughter for that? Like, it's hard for me to get my mind wrapped around it, but that has been passed down through generations from mothers to daughters to be strong. So we've passed that down, but we don't know it comes from our ancestry and our history, which has changed. I don't
Yes.
have to pass that strongness down to my daughter in that way because I don't, the situations is different. But that's where that strong Black woman passing down, it comes from slavery because our mothers had to prepare their daughters. As I read that research, I was like, I need to prepare my daughter, but not like that. And so we don't even know where some of that had come from. And so just in learning that, I just I don't want to subscribe to, we hear strong Black woman, we think it's an anthem, and want to raise up the hand, but it's killing us.
Yeah. Becky, I
It's
love
killing
that.
us.
Let me just say this. Girl, I done wrote so many notes. Every time, I didn't say this to y'all beforehand, but every time Becky and I get together, I'm taking a whole bunch of notes, okay? So far, what I heard from you, and I can totally relate to myself in my own life, is there were some labels that were driving us. Leader, breadwinner, responsible, strong black woman. And so, because of those labels, you felt like you had to live up to the label. Ladies, how many labels are you wearing? Do you feel like you
Mm.
have to live up to? But it was because you decided to slow down and look around. That's what you did. You slowed down and you looked around. You realized, oh, I ain't gotta live up. I ain't gotta do this. And so
Right.
you notice, and you like, I mean, and sometimes that's all it takes is for us to slow down and look around. Look at what it's costing you. Look at what everybody else is doing. Look at what you don't want to do. Look at why they did it. So I want to ask the ladies to ask you to ask yourself this: why am I doing what I'm doing the way that I'm doing it?
Mm-hmm.
And then the second question I want you to ask is there another way that I can get to the result I desire without doing it this way? When I heard you tell your story, it reminded me of my own story, and how I'm the oldest of five, and I just pushed, and I came from less than ideal situation. So I was trying to get out the hood. And because I was trying to get out the hood and stay out the hood, I was going to work as hard as I could, get these grades. And it went beyond school, it went into work. And I remember having one of those light bulb moments like, wait, I'm asking for permission to take care of myself?
Yeah.
Like, that sounds so crazy to me. I'm a whole grown
Right.
woman. I'm asking for permission. That's crazy. So I love that. I love that you made a pivot and you decided. I also love that you said that when you looked around, you made a different decision. And one of the things we know here at Significant Life, and I believe this and we espouse to this, is you have the right to change your mind. Ladies, if you're listening to this podcast, please know you have the right to change your mind. Sometimes when we make commitments to a certain way, a certain lifestyle, a certain personality, or maybe even a certain reputation, we feel stuck with that first commitment and that first decision. But girl, you got the right to change your mind. And I love that Becky changed her mind. And because of that, then she was able to enter into this place of sweatless victory. I researched, y'all, I'm a researcher, this definition of pivot. You know, I played basketball. Becky did too, right,
Yep.
Becky? Okay.
Yep.
Becky, what position did you play?
I was point guard, girl.
Okay, so Becky played point guard, y'all. I played power forward, small forward, and center every now and then. You can't tell from this me sitting down, but I'm 5'11" right now. So I was not nobody's point guard. I had no ball handling skills. Don't worry about that. But so when I hear the word pivot, I think basketball. But I researched the word pivot, and I want to just give you some definitions of the word, because I think sometimes what we do sometimes is when we hear a word or we hear something, we assign a definition and we feel like that's the only way that we can leverage that. It's kind of like, I heard this story. My mama said, strong black women do this. A strong woman does this. A responsible person does this. A smart black girl does this. You know, sometimes we hear these words and we assign a definition, and it's very myopic. So this is what I heard, I read when I looked up pivot. So number one definition is a pivot, a noun version. First of all, I didn't know it could be a noun, but a pivot is a person, a thing, or a factor that has major control, or central role and effect on something. I didn't know that a doggone pivot can have a central effect on something. Never knew that.
Mm.
But then there are two verb versions of pivot that I think resonates with our conversation today. A pivot means to completely change the way you do something. And to pivot means to adapt or improve by adjusting and modifying something. Ladies, I think that's indicative of where we are right now. If we want to really live this life of sweatless victory, we have to be willing to pivot, and that means to adapt or improve or adjust, even modify something in our life. Where in your life do you need to pivot? Where in your life do you need to pivot? And as you're thinking on that, I want to just say this. Pivots can happen when things are good. Becky,
Mm-hmm.
tell me about a time when you made a pivot, and if everybody else would have looked at that pivot, they would have thought, why you do that? Because it seemed good.
Girl, you know what? I think all of my pivots, they said that. I think they said that in all of my pivots, Janice, and like I think about when I was in corporate America, training and development was my strength. It was my superpower. So I was interviewing for training and development positions, and I was determined to get into the training and development field. And all of my my supervisors and bosses, they thought that like that's Becky, that is the area that you should go. But then I had one person that said, you know, Becky, you are really good at an operator too. You're great at operations, but most operators don't have training and development. If you stay as an operator, you are a double barrel. And I thought about it and I was like, he's right. So I'm going to shift my focus on being a regional manager in training and development. I'm going to stay in operations and use my training and development in operations. And so I did that. And everybody was, all the training and development people, because I had been, that was the field I was going to be in, and was like, and everybody else was like, well, Becky, you should go into training. I went into operations, blew it up, like got promoted every 2.5 years because I could not only operate, I could teach other people how to do their job well, and it would make made my job easier. And so people had no idea. They were like, she should be in training and development. I'm staying where I am because I can teach people how to do what I need them to do. So that was one of the things when I left my company to start my company. That was a pivot, and everybody was like, "What? You started as an assistant manager. Now you're a regional vice president. You're running $80 million dollars on a P&L. You have 200 stores. You have 6 days, and you're going to leave? Crazy!" But it was a God calling, like, "No, you can do this for others." And so to leave there and start my company was a pivot.
Mm,
It was a pivot. It was a pivotal change to say you could do more. Inside of the company, I could only help the people inside of the company, but this world was so much bigger. And so that was a pivot. People kind of thought that was crazy. And then when I pivoted from my company to running someone else's company, people were like, what? You've been in your company, it's 10 years running your own company. So did that mean your company wasn't successful? Because now you went to none of that. It's
mm,
like, no. Um, that's a pivot into something else. And Janice, it's so many lessons I have learned to look at life and figure out the principles that I'm supposed to learn as I'm going through situations. And I don't know them in the beginning.
mm,
I know them as I am going through it, or I know it on the back end of it. And so as I've gone through it, here's what I've learned. I've learned that every pivot has been preparation.
I love that.
Like every one of my pivots has been preparation. So for the company that I was running, the $20 million that I was running, I'm not running that anymore. I'm getting ready for God's next. And what I've learned is that from Luxottica, that prepared me for MVP work, that prepared me for Community Bridge, that's preparing me for God's next. Every pivot was a preparation that I didn't realize at the time for God's next, because my ultimate goal in life, that I have been in petition to God with about since I started working, was to make an impact, not just to make an impact, but to make a difference in the world. And so whatever it is, I know I'm supposed to make a difference in the world. And sometimes it's so easy to get caught up is, okay, in Luxottica, this is the difference I'm making in the world.
Yes.
And then it's like, okay, at MVP work, okay, I'm going to make this difference in the world. Okay,
I
it's
live this.
shifted. Okay, now I'm in, and it's so many people could be like, okay, well, did I fail at this? No, it's all preparation for my next.
That's so
And so
good. That's so
that's how
good.
I see it.
That's so
I
good.
see it as God say, I am preparing you for what I've created you to be able to make that impact that I want you to do in the world. And the stuff that He is giving and downloading in me right now has me like so excited and tipsy, like I have to take a sleeping pill to go to sleep so I can rest myself, because I'm like, is this is it right here, God? But here, there are key principles. So key principles that I have learned is in the vision that I have, that God gives me for everything that He's given me, from Luxottica to MVP work to Community Bridge. He gives me a vision and a picture, and I go wholeheartedly inside
Mm,
of it. Wholeheartedly, I am going towards it. But what God has showed me is that it will not always look like that picture.
Mm.
It will not always look like that picture, but you will get the results, even
That's
though the
good.
picture won't look like you. So you got to have the vision. You need to write it down. You need to make it plain, and you need to take the steps to get there. But it has never looked like what I've put down.
That's so
And I,
good.
I have learned that those are the steps you have to take in obedience and compliance. And then when God puts his twist on it, it takes you somewhere. You're like, what? This is the outcome? Oh
Mm.
my God. It does not always look like, and because we are always looking for the picture that we have in our head, when we see something different, sometimes we turn and say, no, 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 that's not it. No, that's not it. When Community Bridge came along, a $20 million company, it threw me off. I had to sit and think about it and pray about it. And then as I went through that process, it was like, okay, like I had prayed, I was going to run a $1 million company, but it didn't look like what I thought it was going to look like.
Mm.
But too
Mm.
often, if it doesn't look like the picture we have in our head, we reject it
Mm.
and we miss out on opportunities. And that was a major opportunity in the preparation for where I'm going. So there are some key principles in everything that you go through, every position, every role, everything that you're doing. It is preparation for your next best. And a lot of times, like you got a picture in your head right now of what that is and what it's going to look like for you to get to that ultimate place. Great. It might not look like it when you get to that end, but it does not mean that you should not be taking those steps. And don't get too comfortable, because it just might shift.
Mm.
You just might have to pivot in the middle of all of the things that you wrote down, all of the things that was a part of that plan. It just might change. And too often, because it was written down, we think, well, it's written in stone and on a scroll, so I can't change it. That's not true.
I love that. Hold on, let
That's
me
not
recap for
true.
the audience. Let me tell you, this blessed me. This is girl. You done said so many things. First of all, you said every pivot is a preparation for God's next. I love that. I think that's a hope. That's something that we need to grab onto. Every pivot, every place where we had to change, every place where we had to adjust, every place where we had to, go a little bit differently than what we originally intended. That's a place that will prepare us if we allow it for God's next. I love that Becky said that. And then she said, now I don't even know if y'all knew that Becky said this, but this was really, really, really good. Becky said, one thing I do is if I have a vision, once I have a vision, I go wholeheartedly after it. I think there's somebody is listening right now that is getting stuck because you doggone double dutching with your vision. You're not even going wholeheartedly with the vision. You have it, you prayed about it, God gave you a picture, an idea in your mind, and you're like, you still hesitating. And so sometimes why we get stuck and why victory is not sweatless is because you won't even commit to the vision. And then
Mm.
for those of us who've actually committed to the vision and we're rocking hard, we're going in, we done pursued this thing. I got a picture in my head. Please be okay if it don't look like what you thought it would. Let me tell you something, Becky. That now I really have an issue with that. Let me go ahead and say this. I have an issue, people, because Lord, I had trusted you with this idea that you trusted me with. Now I'm up here trying to be obedient and do the work. What Becky said, I have my obedience and my compliance to what I believe that you said, and then you're gonna switch it up. So when God does the switcheroo and it don't actually look like what you thought, Becky, tell me how do you keep on going? How do you know that A, you didn't miss God, and B, that you need to make a shift? How do you know that? Like, what are some of the things that you do to kind of give yourself confirmation that it's time to do something a little different without beating yourself up? Tell me about that.
I have to. That's where that relationship comes into play, because if you are not in relationship and communicating with God enough, you will get in your own head and hear the wrong voices. So for me, in those times, I'm like, Lord, get my voice out of my head, get the
Yes.
enemy's voice out of my head. I only
Yes.
need to hear you.
Yes.
And so I'm at a place where um, this is happening, and I don't want to make the wrong decision. I need your will to be done. Um, like Jesus said, before he had to go through the process of losing his life was like, not my will, nevertheless
Yes.
thy will be done. And so I would be like, okay, Lord, this is what I want and this is what I'm excited about, but nevertheless, it's in the nevertheless, those words that nevertheless, thy will be done. That is what my prayer is. Nevertheless, I don't care if it's, I even remember in corporate America, I'd be like, oh, I want this job. But nevertheless,
Yeah,
if it is not for me, if it is not going to help me to be the person you want me to be, keep it from me.
that's
Hold it
good.
from me, block it. Put something in the way. Stop it from coming into my area or my presence. So anytime I didn't get a job, I'd be like, oh, I won. Yes. And people like, you didn't get it. Oh, it was on purpose. It was on. I wasn't supposed to get that one. Like that kept my sanity. So when things shift, I'm telling you, Janice, all of those pictures and stuff that I have seen, I like, okay, God, this is the vision, this is where I'm going. I could visualize where it is and work my way towards it. But it always looked different when God opened the door. It just never looked exactly like I had in my picture, but it was the result that I wanted. And
Yeah,
so what
I
that
love
said
that.
is God's like, I'm going to give you what you want. It it's not going to look like you want. And that's when the scripture comes alive. God's ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not
Yes,
our thoughts. So
yes.
how we're saying to He like, Becky, I'm going to give it to you. But I think a little different than you do.
I love that. I
I'm going to
love,
see it a little different than you do.
yes,
So
yes.
it's going to look a little different than
I
you're
think that's
thinking it.
important that you
But
just, what you just said. Let me just say this part. One of the things that you said that is a real clear distinction, and it gives me peace, is that the result that we desire, even though the path to get there don't look the same, it's still the same result. It's like, oh, I did
yeah,
hear you. Oh, okay, God, but you could have told me that. This is my favorite thing is, Lord, you could have told me we was gonna go this way. If you would have wrote it in the book, I would have read the book and I would have known we was gonna go this way. Girl, he'll never do that. But I love that because this is a Colossians, I think it's Colossians 2:15, and it says, and may the peace of God rule in your hearts, right? And if at the end or through the process, I can see I have peace, that I'm going this way, but there's peace. It don't look like what I thought it was, but I have peace. That lets me know that I'm safe. That
hmm
word rule in that particular verse means safe. It means umpire, actually. It means umpire. In baseball, umpire lets you know whether you're out or you're safe. And so for my own self, as I'm navigating and the pivot comes and it's like, God, Lee, this ain't what I was thinking. This don't even go the way. Did I miss you, God? I start looking for, well, do I have peace? If I can get over the fact that it's not going the way I think, has God given me peace? And that's how I know that I'm not out. And then on the other side, you said this in the beginning of you telling the story. You don't know until the end, till you walk it out, that, oh, God, hush your mouth. It was all this in it. But you kept on walking. And so I love that.
hmm
I love the pivot. I love to keep on going. I love wholeheartedly. And I love this that you also said, sometimes we miss it because we reject the picture because it doesn't look like what we thought it was going to look like. And I just want to, just encourage someone not to reject what's in front of you because it doesn't look like what you thought. I remember, Becky, we had a conversation when the opportunity came for you to go and work and run
hmm
another person's company. And it was
yeah.
it was like, well, we're gonna pray about this, but it wasn't like what, but it was so good. And it was what I know is not only did you pray God's will, I know because we literally were praying that. And you was like, I'm praying this, Janice. You was talking about, you told me how you talked to your husband about it. You were praying and you just were seeking the Lord. You did not rush into the decision. You prayed. But then I put on my notes that, in addition to praying, in addition to really getting concrete, God, what are you saying? Y'all, we got to have a trusted community of other people that can be a reflection for us, that we know that
hmm
can champion us and will bombard heaven on our behalf, that doesn't have anything to gain or lose by you making this decision, but can really give you an unbiased decision because they are talking to the Lord on your behalf and they want to hear too. Because I was really honored that you talked to me about it because it was before you even made the decision. And I was like, oh, we're going to pray about this because we want whatever the Lord says. Because, you Becky A. Davis, I be calling you by your whole middle name. I be like, because you got things to do. And so as we get ready to wrap up, I want to talk about I want you to just reflect a little bit on the importance of having a community and how that has impacted you in making these decisions. Because, you talked about the naysayers and the voices that were not in alignment with God's will for your life. But what about the voices that were in support of God's will for your life? How did you do that? What role did they play?
Girl, let me tell you, I called um in all situations. I call on my community that to talk me off the ledge. I call on my community to encourage me. I call on my community when I need prayer. And so if you don't have that, like you missing a lot in your life, like you struggling by yourself unnecessarily. Like we are not supposed to do any part of our life alone. And so having a community of people that I can pick up the phone and say, look, this is what's going on, this is what's happening, this is what I'm thinking, and give me your thoughts on it, give me your perspective on it. And then to take all of that, the one thing, let me tell you this. What we don't need to do is call people and ask people for their advice, because advice is opinions and what people think. But what we need to do is we need to call people and ask for wise counsel, because see, that's what the Bible talks about: counsel, good counsel. So we need to ask people for counsel, and good counsel is people who have either had an experience or people who are grounded, who can share information with you because of their experience, because of their knowledge. When you call people asking for advice in an area that they have no idea, ain't no telling what you come up with. And now you all over the place because you're trying to take this information and figure out how you're going to use it to make the decision. And it does not help you to move forward. And so I always feel really confident because I call people for wise counsel. And the people that I call, I trust what they say. I trust who they are. I trust who they are in my life, and that they're going to share things with me, good, bad, or ugly, that I need to hear, that's going to help me in my thought process to be able to make a decision and move forward. And those ones that'll check me in my thinking and check me in my thought process or in my actions. And so you got to have those people, but we got to stop asking for advice. Advice is opinions, and opinions is just what I think about at this time, as opposed to wise counsel. Is two totally different
Yeah.
types of communication.
Girl, I remember the first time you ever said that. I was like, wait a minute, wait a minute. Becky said, listen, y'all, Becky be telling me stuff. So what Becky hadn't told y'all is she's a leadership guru. And so she's my resident leadership coach. Anytime I want to elevate the person that I am in the form of leading, whether it's self-leadership, organizational leadership, community leadership, I go to Becky because she helps you see what you can't see. And Becky is like, first of all, Janice, let me just say y'all something. You don't need to ask nobody for their advice. You don't want nobody's advice. Anybody got time for their opinion? This is a serious decision. You need wise counsel, somebody with some experience, some evidence. I was like, oh, sick, they're not the same thing. So I'm not interested in your opinion, your advice right now. I'm going places where I have wise counsel, where I can trust your voice and trust your voice in my life concerning the matter that I'm coming to you for. I think this is a perfect place to break and let you all know that Becky is going to be one of our featured, not just speakers, but strategists who are going to work with our women for our upcoming Arise, Align, and Live live event here in Atlanta. I'm so excited, August 4th and 5th. Now, y'all think this conversation has been great. It's more than a conversation. When you join us for Arise, Align, Live, and you can go over to the website, arisealignlive.com, and reserve your spot, what you'll find is over the course of 2 days, we are coming together as women who are high-performing, purpose-driven Christian women. So we do what we need to do to get things done, but we do everything from a lens of purpose and values and passion because we want to honor God with our lives. Y'all, and we're coming together to figure out how we're going to design, along with the Lord, our next phase of life. So if you're tired of striving and you know you're in that season, it's time, maybe it's time to pivot. Maybe it's time to adjust and you're looking for the right path to your sweatless victory. I want you to join us on August 4th and 5th. Go at arisealignlive.com, reserve your spot. Becky will be there. And she, along with some of my other friends, I'll show y'all a picture real quick. And for those of you who are watching live, those of you who are on the podcast, you can't see the picture, arisealignlive.com. I want you to know that we are going to teach, but then every teaching segment, we're actually going to do the work in the room. So Becky will be able to take a look at what you create, and she'll be able to give you insight and wisdom. And so I'm just excited about what we get to do. Head over to arisealignlive.com. That's the sponsor of this episode. I can't wait to see you here in Atlanta. Becky, as we get ready to end our podcast episode, first, thank you. Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing. And thank you, as always, for being just a great sound woman who loves God, got good sense, can handle my crazy, laugh with me, cry with me, pray with me, and just give me good sound counsel. And thank you for what you shared with our podcast audience today about really navigating through the moments of pivoting so that we can live this sweatless victory. Share with us, as you end, any last words, any things that you want us to take away as we get ready to make our own pivots in our life?
I share with you guys that my ultimate goal was to not just make an impact on the world, but to make a difference in the world. What is your ultimate goal? What is your ultimate goal in life? What is your ultimate goal when you leave this place? What is it that you want to have been said about you? Because whatever that is, that's your North Star. All of the things that you do between now and then should be the steps to get you there. That's what's going to help you arise, align, and live.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Becky. Becky, where can people find out more about you? I know you're going to be here in Atlanta with us, but if they want to follow you, connect with you, where can they find out more about you?
Anything Bosspreneur. If you Google Bosspreneur on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads now
I
is
know, right?
all at Bosspreneur. So we can connect and hook up that way.
Okay, well, I'll be sure to put Becky's information in the notes. Thank you so much, Becky. Ladies, I want you to know I'm so excited about this episode. I'm excited about this series on Sweatless Victory. I'm excited about what we're going to do in Atlanta and how we get to do it together. And so I would love for you to join me and some of my good, close girlfriends who love the Lord and are doggone good at what they do as we map out living our significant lives together in this next season. As you know, a significant life is a life in which you live, lead, and serve from an anchored place. Not a scattered place, not a place of striving, and not even a place of settling. I don't know if you recognize from Becky's story that she never said that she settled. She just decided to do it differently. She pursued the goals in a different way. She pursued what God called her to be in a different way. And one of the things I just really wanted to pull out while she and I were talking is along the journey, everything looked like the fulfillment of the vision, but then there was this tension that said, oh, this ain't it. I love that because I can relate to that. Like as I'm navigating this, it's like, man, I thought this was it. I thought this career was going to be the way that I touched the world for God. I thought this was going to be the way that I changed lives for the Lord. I thought this was the way I fulfilled my great vision. But that wasn't it, and she didn't quit. She kept on moving forward. And so if you've been feeling like, man, Janice, I hear you. I'm ready for my next phase, but honestly, I don't know how to do it without striving. Girl, meet us here in Atlanta, August 4th and 5th, as you get the strength and strategy for your next season of life. Go over to arisealignlive.com. That's arisealignlive.com and reserve your spot today. I can't wait to see you. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode. Until next time, I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Okay, that's the end, people who are of the recording. So let me bring Becky back on the screen. If anybody is here live in the audience and you have any questions for Becky or I, you want to talk to us real quick, drop your comments in the chat. We can see your comments live. I'll give a few moments if anybody has any questions, any shout outs, any things you want us to know. We can see you live and I will answer your question on the screen. Okay. I do have it pulled up, Becky, but let me just look and see while I wait, because sometimes
Okay.
there's a delay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so let's see. Oh, girl, we got 17 comments under here. Okay, hey, Arlinda. How are you? Jamia said, hi, everybody. Girl, Crystal said, that nevertheless, though, that nevertheless. Woo. Oh, somebody else said, nevertheless. Jamia said, nevertheless, Becky, nevertheless. Okay. Oh man. Okay, so another woman said, "So good, so ready, so true." No, they got these praising hand emojis over here on there. Okay, ladies, I'm reading Becky your comments. Any questions? Thank you for your comments. But any questions, any thoughts? Becky's here with us. We want to make sure we answer them. Let me go over to YouTube and see if we got any questions or comments in YouTube. See, this is what I'm saying. The way technology set up. Let me see. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. Let me make sure I
That
read it.
nevertheless got me too.
Girl, that never,
Like, hmm,
Becky.
nevertheless,
See this. Let me
thy
tell you something.
will be
Right.
done.
Who don't be saying nevertheless? It's me over here. I be kicking the screen with, okay then, nevertheless then. Sometimes it take me a minute. Sometimes it take me a minute to get to that nevertheless.
I'm
Okay.
telling
All right. I
you.
think I answered all the comments. Let me check one more time to make sure. Um, Oh, Jennifer Bliss said, I appreciate you so much. This spoke to me. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for showing
Thank you,
up.
Jennifer.
Cause oh girl, she over here about to submit talking about that part. She put hashtag exhausted. I didn't even see that. And Becky, you said you choose not to. There was a comment like, oh yeah, I ain't choosing to do that. So that resonated.
Right.
Dallas said, hey, Becky and Janice.
Hey, hey, Dallas.
Oh man. Okay, let's see. Okay. Oh, the question came up. Okay, so how do you fight? I have this question came in from Crystal. She's live right now. She wants to know, how do you fight sweatlessly? So how do you fight sweatlessly? Crystal, drop in the chat if you have a specific scenario you'd want us to consider or a specific part of life. But Becky, I'll let you start. How do you fight sweatlessly?
I would answer that just without all of the strife, normally when you fight, let's think about it from the situation of a fight. Emotions are high. You are wanting to win the battle, so you're doing everything at any cost for you to win. That's with sweat. Sweatlessly is, I don't have to do it that way. I
Yeah.
can win, and I can just sit and think of how I'm going to win this.
Yes, that's what I was
I
going
could
to say. Yes.
strategize a totally different way and never raise a glove.
Yes,
It's
I
it's
literally
just
was going to
it's
say
a
that's good.
different way of doing it. You can fight, um, have a sweatless fight and not work 15 hours a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a different, like, you can strategize and prioritize your day to get it done in 6 hours. Like, I had a lot of sweatless days because I would be working 14, 15 hours because I thought that was the norm for the people in the industry. Everybody was doing it. So because I was in the industry, I was mimicking what they were doing. And then when I realized I don't have to do it this way, I remember calling my boss and I told her, because it was I was getting drained and I was getting burnout. I was really feeling burnout. And I loved my job. I loved what I was doing, but I was getting burnout. When you get burnout, you don't want to work. You don't want to do anything. And so I called her. I was on the road 4 weeks out of the month. If it was a 5 week month, I might got a month home at home. So I called her and I said, "Hey, I didn't ask. I told her what I was going to do. I said, "Hey, I need to rework my schedule. So what I'm going to do of the first week of every month, I will work from home. I will not travel the first week. That is going to be the week that I plan my entire month out with my territory. The 3 weeks that I do travel, I will leave on Tuesday and I will come back on Thursday. That meant I was going to be home Monday and Friday because before I would fly out Monday, come home on Friday. So I said I was going to be leaving out on Tuesday and coming home on Thursday. So that meant I had Monday and Friday office days. That became sweatless. I just changed. I still got the same work done, but I had to change the way I did it. I did not have to. And it was so funny. My peers started calling and saying, "You're in the office? How are you in the office this week?" And I was like, "I'm working in the office all this week." And I told my boss, "If you want to get the best of me, I got to use my time that works for me. And the way that it's lined for, that's not working for me. It's draining me. So this is what works for me." Guess what? My results improved. And then they started, my peers started saying, "Hey, I'm getting tired." And so they started mimicking the same thing that I was doing. So when you think about sweatless victories and working without sweat, it's just doing it differently, not killing yourself to get it done. It's just a different way of doing it.
I love that, Becky. Becky, you gave so many nuggets, y'all. I want if you're taking notes, and Crystal, feel free to drop in the comments if that helped or you needed any more clarification. But for those of us who are taking notes, let me just share a couple of things Becky said. The first thing she said is, in order to have a sweatless victory and to fight from a sweatless perspective, you need to strategize. So you got to come up with a strategy. So she said strategize. So a lot of times, so many of us, we move straight into fighting. Things happen. We look at them like, oh my God, and we react instead of coming up with a game plan. Number two, she said that we need to sometimes it's a simple thing as reworking what you've already been doing. She says, if you get, the goal is to get to the specific outcome. So rework how you're going to get to that outcome. I'm mindful of the fact that Crystal said, how do you fight? So what would be your normal way? Hearing that and applying it to the word fight, I would probably say, Crystal, don't fight the way you would normally fight. Don't show up the way you would normally show up, because probably your normal way is going to wear you out. And so in this, and because I know, and so what we all, and I know Becky is saying this, and so I think I'll be safe to say that she'll agree with this, is we might need to say, Lord, give me a divine strategy for this season that I'm in, for this, what I'm dealing with, because the way that I would normally do this, I think is going to wear me out. And so part of the rework is to seek the Lord. So a part, even for the strategy, is to seek God. God, give me a strategy. Y'all, we have so many examples in scripture of that. Joshua was known for winning battles. Just read Joshua chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That joker was fighting and he was winning. Now, when I first read Joshua 1 through 6, the whole thing, I was like, why Joshua kept asking God what to do when literally, boy, last chapter you won. Just do what you did in the last chapter. But Joshua, the Bible says that he was a warrior. So he was skilled at war. Yet he knew the significance of the Lord guiding him. Like his victory was in his constant communication with the Lord. Sometimes, remember when they won the battle at Jericho, it was just walking around and then screaming at the end. Like it was, you know what I'm saying? Like that was a crazy strategy. So so not only are you going to strategize, but every step of the battle before you go into the battle, before you step in, seek the Lord for the strategy. And then Becky said this, and I think this is important for all of us, especially as women. She said that she alluded to her setting a standard. She said, no, I don't want to work that way. She didn't ask permission to establish a standard. Somebody needs to hear this. Becky set her own standard. She didn't go and ask permission for her standard. Oftentimes in our community, we don't often call it pivot. We call it finding your rhythm. And what we do is sometimes we try to operate on a old rhythm. And so when it's time for our life is demanding a new rhythm of us, but we're so used to this old rhythm and we are afraid to let go of the old rhythm to embrace or discover the new rhythm that we stay stuck and frustrated. Then we feel like we got to ask everybody, is it okay if I change the rhythm? Girl, this your life. Change the rhythm and then notify everybody else. Okay? Change the rhythm and then notify everybody else. They'll come online. And why? And this is the last thing Becky said that I thought was so important. Oh my gosh. She said, she told her boss, if you want to get the best out of me, y'all, if you want to get the best out of me, I need to work like this. Some of us don't even know what would allow us to show up at our best. What would allow you to show up as your best? Because if fighting like that is not going to allow you to show up at your best, stop fighting like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yo, and this is we talking about not just living, but even in fighting, because sometimes the victory is in a fight. And so,
Mm-hmm.
listen, if I can't be fighting swinging like this. Y'all know why? I'm over 40. I ain't got that much energy. I'm be tired of all that darn swinging. So I need my posture, and I need my hits to pack a powerful punch. So that might mean I need to step back a minute. Lord, give me a strategy. Tell me what I
Yeah.
need to do, because I can't I ain't listen, all that jumping around, my knees different. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna do all that with you today. So Crystal, I hope that helped. Becky girl, you gave me a lot. Set a standard, ladies. Some of you need to know what
Yes.
doesn't work for you anymore. Okay, let me make sure. Hold on. Because for whatever reason, my
Thank you,
comments ain't.
Krista, for the question.
Yeah, that was a great question, Crystal. Thank you. All right, so let me see. Let me see. Mhm. She, she's screaming. So good. Thank you. So helpful. Okay. Jamia asked you, Becky. Becky, as you pray to walk in your purpose, what do you see as the greatest distraction, internal or external, and how do we see it?
Oh, that's easy. The greatest distraction is me, my own thoughts, my own junk. Um, is the biggest distraction. Like I I have realized that Satan can sometimes be number two. Like my
Mm,
own junk is number one.
I'm done. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Okay, keep talking.
Yeah,
Keep
like
talking.
Satan, like he's second. My own doubt of myself, my own second guessing, my own thinking I'm not good enough, my own thinking I'm not skilled enough or talented enough. Like that's number one. Satan come behind and reinforce my own thoughts.
Mm,
Ha!
mm,
That part right there.
mm.
So, like I stay in war with him on a daily basis. Like get up, like, okay, Joker, not today, because let me tell you, this is what you're not gonna do to me. Like God, you have given, like I have to stay in prayer to the Father about who I am. Lord,
Mm,
I know you have created and designed me to be. I have to stay in that posture to keep my strength and my armor on, so that when he comes against me, against those thoughts, I can fight him. Like I can hear it and be like, I know that's you. I know that. Like before, I could just hear myself and not know that it was the enemy. I could
mm.
just hear myself, and now I am in this battle with, well, maybe it's, but because I stay in communication daily with the Father, and we got this thing going on, when I hear those conversations that I start having with myself, and I start talking to the Father, like, Lord, just remove that out of my head. Like it is a constant battle. I am so much better at it. I am so much better because I believe that doubts and fears, they will always be there. They will always come up. You just have a new level of getting past them.
That's
You
good.
have to strengthen yourself for the next time that they come. But number one is my own junk in my head. Number two is Satan trying to reinforce the junk that I have in my head.
Y'all, that was so good. Becky, Becky, Becky. That's a drop the mic moment right there, because baby, the way the way we be wanting to blame the devil when it be us.
Girl, I done said it before the devil even said. I say it to myself, and the devil be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, that is. Let me add to that, because I
I
just heard
love
her
it.
say
I
it
love it.
about herself. Like
Mm,
I got to speak some other stuff about myself. But oh yeah, like I used to have it on my phone, a reminder in my phone. Lord, help me to see me how you see me. I had that
yes.
in my phone for years because I needed to see what God would see in me. And Ephesians 1 and 4 made it super clear to me. And in 1 through 11, there are five things that you see in there that God says about us. We are blessed, we are chosen, we are redeemed, we are adopted, and we are loved. It's
Mm,
all in that one
mm,
chapter. And so I had every day I would be like, you blessed, you chosen, you adopted, you are redeemed, girl, you are loved, you are forgiven, girl. Let it. I would say it over and over because the enemy don't want you to. to know that. And so just that, when I would go into that mode, I'm like, Lord, help me to see you how you see me. But I still know that there's more of me that I still don't see, that God still has to reveal in me.
Becky, let me tell you something. See, this is what I'm saying. We done been on this podcast for a long time, but this is what I'm going to let you go, but I appreciate you because you done blessed me, girl. You done blessed me. Listen. First of all, Becky said, it ain't even the devil, it's you. So, he's second. He's second to the junk that's going on. Where's the sabotage? How you see yourself. Then the second thing she said was she checks in with the Father every day. Every day she's constantly checking in to see how he sees her and communicate to herself what he's saying about her. I love that because one of the things that Becky didn't say, that used to be my issue, I ain't got it no more. No, she said, I'm much better than what I used to be. And I think sometimes we measure our success by saying, well, if I still got that problem, then I'm not successful. Girl, I literally, in this process right here, what's happening? Okay, help me, girl, because the way I'm just feeling, I'm second guessing myself. And so what is your plan to deal with how you second guess yourself? And I love that she gave a scripture. She gave, what I like to say is there is a truth that we're facing. There's a truth that we know. Man, I messed up. Man, I missed the deadline. Man, I stumbled over that word and couldn't find my paper. That is true. That wasn't a lie. That was the truth. But then there is a higher truth. And Becky shared with us the higher truth and the highest truth. That one that she's standing on is in Ephesians chapter 1. And the 5 principles that's in Ephesians chapter 1. She said she's blessed. She's chosen. She's redeemed. What's the other two?
She's forgiven.
I'm forgiven.
She's
yes.
loved. She's adopted.
She love. And so listen, I'm trying to find here because I had one of those moments my own self recently, where I was struggling to really believe what God has said about me. I know y'all know y'all don't be thinking we be struggling to believe what God said. And sometimes I need to just see it. And y'all know not only am I a word girl, I just realized this in preparing for something else, that words and us hearing things is only 11% of our ability to really take it in, accept it, and transform. But when we have a picture, that increases our likelihood of establishing a thing in our mind, our heart, and way of being by 83%. That jacked me up. Pictures. So it just messed me up. That's how important having a visual is. Y'all remember when God told Abraham, because Abraham was like, oh, well, how do I know that you are going to do such and such? How do I know you're going to bless me with a kid? And how do you know that I'm going to be a father of many nations? And God told him to go outside and look at the stars and count them stars if you can. Well, God, first of all, you can't count them doggone stars. It's in Genesis chapter 15, if you don't know what I'm talking about. But he sent him outside and he gave him a picture. Becky told us about that picture earlier today. He said, go look at them stars. But then y'all, if you look at Genesis chapter 12, it wasn't the first time that he gave him a picture. He actually told him in Genesis 12 to go look at the sand. If God calls on us to pull on our imagination and to have a picture in our head, a picture of what is possible for us, a picture of the promise that he has for us. If he's doing that in scripture, who do we think that we are to not have a picture? I think for whoever asked this question and many others who are listening, it's important for you to have a picture of what God said about you in front of you. What is that? If it's for a season, Ephesians chapter 1, and those 5 things that Becky, those five truths about who you are that Becky's recited for us, if that's what you're going to meditate on, if that's what's going to be your reminder every 2 hours on your phone, put a picture up. My scripture actually is Genesis 1, chapter 1, verse 28. Clearly, I can't find it right now, but I actually literally have an image of myself with the principles that in this 5 of them that scripture says about me, so I can be reminded of who I am, because the enemy is not taking naps. Every day he is coming after you. And guess what he's doing? The Bible says that he is an accuser. He is accusing you. He is literally, one version says that he's scandalous. He scandalizes your name. That's what he does. He is literally accusing you. And you got a choice. Are you going to agree with him or are you going to agree with God? Okay. All right. Let me see if we got any more questions. We can go home. Because this podcast, it was good. Thank y'all for hanging around and asking these questions. Let me just see.
It's good.
It is good, girl. I'm like, okay. Hold on. Let me see. Oh my gosh. She said, wow, that's self-doubt. Jesus. She said, Jamil said, I jumped out of my chair. eyes up. Thank you, God. Thank you so much for this answer. So glad I asked. I love both of you ladies. Okay, ladies, and everyone else who's watching us live, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Significant Life Podcast. I want to thank you, Becky, for joining me one more time. I would love to see you here live with us in Atlanta for Arise, Align, and Live. Head over to the site, arisealignlive.com. I keep trying to show it, but for whatever reason, it's not showing. Oh, that's why. It's not showing up on my screen. But I would love for you to join us. And until next time, here is where you can listen to the podcast and check out the podcast, the Significant Life Podcast. Just look up Significant Life with Janice Anderson. It is on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube now. You can even catch us here on YouTube. So check us out, subscribe, share it, rate and review it. I would love to hear your reviews, and this is how it boosts our ability to appear on other podcast episodes. I got that all chopped up. Hopefully we can edit something out of that. So rate, review, subscribe, all the things. Ladies, it's been so good. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, bye-bye.